private wealth. And finally, I'd like to invite on stage Mr. Vinod Chaudhary, advisor, FFFAI. So very quickly, without any delay, I'd first like to invite Mr. Yes.
Their presentation is loaded already.
This is his computer. All right, without any further delay, let's begin the session. I'd like to invite Mr. Ashutosh Chaturvedi to please address the August gathering with his presentation.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thanks. I'll call you if you...
Maybe you can start with good weather.
Yeah. Very good evening, friends. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. It's raining outside, and I can see the impact of the rains in the hall inside, like people wanting to enjoy the rains. But having said that, I wanted to just recollect my thoughts on the call I had with Shantanu. When he called me up to discuss this session, my sense was that it's a routine presentation on family business. So there's nothing to worry. I'll be able to run one of my presentations. Little did I realize that Shantanu wanted me to focus on the family part of the business and not the business part. And I could see that passion. Like he kept telling me that, Ashutosh, let's focus on family. Now, people do take care of their businesses, but in the process, miss on what's essential for the family. And I said, okay, I'll try to do that. I wasn't aware at that point of time that what the work I am doing will help me in taking or in addressing some of the matters relating to my family, some of the matters relating to my assets. What kind of assets I have, what kind of risk is there, what kind of protection measures are in place. I actually got to see that as a result of preparing for this session. So thank you, Shantanu, for giving me an opportunity to do that for myself. And my hope is that all of you get a glimpse of the issues around the family assets, the exposures, and what kind of protection measures can be used to protect and insulate the family, and also the need to evaluate that on a going forward basis. So whatever you do today may not be good enough 2 years down the line. So with that, I'll want to start my presentation, and briefly I am wanting to cover 4 things. One, what's the need? And here I want to share some of the stories which we have heard in the public space. Overview of a family business. Then what are the issues in family business? And some of the practices which have been used traditionally and professionally by the family owners to address these issues. So let's look at some of these stories. If you look at Ambani family, after late Dhirubhai Ambani expired, the family was in what I'll say like deep rift between the two brothers. And the reason, if you see, is that Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani left without a will. Like he thought or he expected that after his reign is over, the two brothers will continue amicably. Now, that's a wish which every one of us here in this room would have. But the important point is that one needs to plan for the worst. And that's something which he had been doing all his life for his business, but didn't do for his family assets. And that's where the impact was on family, on the shareholders, on the business itself. So, just imagine one of the most astute businessmen didn't wrote a will, didn't had an inheritance plan or a succession plan in place. And that's the key point which I again want to remind. We spend a lot of time on our businesses, a lot of time. But how much time do we spend on our family? And when I'm talking about family, obviously in relation to family assets, how much time we spend on how the wealth would pass, how much time we spend on how would it manage going forward, and what are the issues which needs to be looked into right up front, and what to do when something falls, things fall away, when things are not working all right. So that's one learning coming out from that. The second related event was when we had a will written by late Mrs. Birla. She wrote a will. Now, in that will, the assets were given to an outsider, Mr. Lotha. So, while will was there, it was not shared with the family. And that was the reason for turmoil after Mrs. Birla passed away. So again the issue is, you may have written a will, but in that will what you are doing, if you do not share it with the family members, at least the close family members, then there could be a horror story waiting after one passes away. So that's the second. Let's look at the third story, Kingfisher. Now, Kingfisher was started, huge success in initial years, and ultimately when business was looking down, then what? Now, when we do businesses, and all of us know, we have to mortgage and pledge shares and our personal wealth and guarantees, all that happens. But hardly do we realize that it could have impact on the personal wealth. Now look at this scenario where not only the shares of Kingfisher, which were pledged, are gone. Well, shares of Kingfishers hardly have any value today. But the lenders are now after shares of United Breweries, the family jewel in Mr. Malaya's family. So what if he loses those jewels because one business was not doing well? That's the other piece. So what one is putting on the personal front, the assets, the guarantees, all that, when one is putting in, one does it with hopes of a bright future, but at the same time, the possible repercussions if things goes bad needs to be considered right up front. The next story is Deccan Chronicle. Again, this is very current. Not only the business is now with the lenders and they are wanting to sell it piecemeal, the owners, the directors having warrants in their personal name for default on account of, let's say, dishonored checks and some other things. So that again is something which one needs to look at. What is it that you want to plan for alongside being engaged in business? And what this slide shows is the need for looking at it. If not kind of saying that this is something which might happen, not that way, but at least thinking for a minute that if things go bad, then there could be a downside, and how am I prepared? Now let's look at, in a couple of minutes, overview of a family business. And definition of family business is businesses owned by the family. And globally it is so. Globally businesses are owned by families, whether we look at Europe, whether we look at America, whether we look at Middle East, that's the case. And one of the important research findings are that family businesses outperform non-family businesses in terms of growth, in terms of sales, in terms of profitability, in terms of efficiencies. So they are much better run than any non-family businesses. But at the same time, if you look at the slide, there is one stark finding, and that finding is family businesses, the ownership of family businesses hardly continues beyond third generation. So while they are very efficient, they are very profitable, they do very well, but there is an issue on the continuity of the family business. And just to say, just to remind, while you may be a successful businessman, but that does not ensure that family, as a family, you are doing well. So doing good business is not a guarantee or cannot make up for the family failure. And that's where we need to focus on family as well. And this slide captures some of the strengths which are there in family businesses. And simultaneously, there are some weaknesses as well. And one of the best things which happens in family business is that personal attention, that personal focus, that drive, that passion, which makes business efficient, profitable continuously. But at the same time, the larger the family grows, the larger are the issues relating to conflict between the family members, non-alignment between the family members, lack of informal management structures and corporate governance between the family members, inadequate succession plans, and also favoritism at the workplace. On this slide, what I've done is I've tried to classify the issues relating to family in 4 buckets. If you look at the first bucket, which is continuity planning. So all family businesses plan to continue beyond generations. I remember this is a discussion with one of the family owners who wanted a structure, a legal structure where he'll be able to continue the family as a business unit it was perpetual, like his desire was that the family should continue perpetually. Now, the problem is in trust, you can't continue beyond a particular period of time, beyond 3 or 4 generations. But his desire was, no, my family should be so structured that they are able to continue perpetually. So, for that, putting a family office in place became very essential. And separation of the business from family became essential. Also, in continuity planning, what is important is to look at the aspirations of the future generations and provide a mechanism which allows family members to continue in the businesses, in the traditional businesses, and also at the same time leave and set up their own businesses for which support is available from the family. Until and unless that mechanism is put into place, there are bound to be issues, and if those issues are not handled, that leads to disintegration. The second issue relating to family office is succession planning. And there are 2 issues regarding succession planning. One needs to lay down clearly how the wealth is going to pass. So, whether you do it by way of will, whether you do it by way of a Hindu undivided family, whatever mechanism one chooses, one really needs to ensure that how wealth will pass to the next generation. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect, which is equally important, that relates to business, and that is how the management of business will pass. And at times, what is also important is how to divide and segregate and allocate businesses to various family members in case they can't remain united. So that becomes important in succession. The third issue is relating to conflict management. We all know in our family there are bound to be conflicts. We virtually breathe those conflicts every day. It's in our personal matters, it's in our financial matters. That's something which is there, and even if we wish that those conflicts should not be there, that wish is like living in a fool's paradise. So there are going to be conflicts. Now, how do we address those conflicts? That's important. And for that, one needs to put again a system or a structure in place which is loosely referred to as family office or family forums, where every family member has a chance for a fair hearing. So that's and that's where most of the issues come. If there is no structure, if there is no mechanism which allows family members to raise their issues and get them redressed, then that again leads to disintegration of families. The next point, which is again at very ground level, is looking at how do you address the issues of mortgaging personal assets or pledging your personal assets or giving your personal guarantees for the growth of business, for the business in which you are investing in. Also related are the issues surrounding family settlements or divorce. Now this is something which we have seen in last 5 to 10 years. How do you insulate yourself from such events in the family? The next issue is relating to the business liabilities. So a particular person in a family engaged in a business not doing well, could he also impact the other part of the families? So how to insulate from business liabilities arising or accruing on account of any family member? For that again one needs to look at what structure is available, what can one do to insulate from the liabilities, third-party liabilities or the risk which arise because somebody is engaged in business. And next is, and it's a very tax issue, next is estate duty. We had estate duty almost 25 years, 30 years back. At the time, estate duty had a varying rate of 10% to 40%. And estate duty is levied when property passes on death of a person. Now, if there is a estate duty of 40%, that can erode the wealth which is being passed, which is being handed over to next generation. So, is there any solution to that? And why I'm saying this is, in last 1.5 years, we have seen Finance Ministry and Mr. Chidambaram talking about estate duty on numerous occasions. So, is this something which is in the offing? Maybe. Is there something which can be done if such a tax comes in? If such a tax comes in, thereafter nothing can be done. But yeah, probably something can be done beforehand. And related issue is tax efficiency. So whatever wealth is being held by the family, is it being held efficiently from the point of view of taxes? Because if one pays taxes, then again, the family wealth to the extent of tax outflow erodes. Some of the other issues relating to families are, how do you mentor and train next generation? Now, these are soft issues, but becomes very important when one is writing a family protocol or doing a family protocol. Or even, I remember when we were doing something like this for a particular family, and what we did, we spoke to almost every member in the family. And every member has a different concern. So some of the younger members felt, what about our training and mentoring? Who will invest in us? Who will give us money to invest in the businesses we dream and we want to engage in? The other issue is deciding between the reinvestment of profits and payment of dividends or even payment of remuneration. So how should family members be remunerated? And next is establishing a strong business working relationship between the family members. Also at times, there's lot of tussle on who is going to be the leader of the family. So that again is something which comes into play. And I'm not taking issues relating to business. Okay, yeah. So let's look at what some of the successful families do. So most important thing, you plan for succession and partition of ownership if it is so required. And you separate ownership from the business. And how you do this is by creating separate forums for family and businesses. So family and business one needs to separate. And how you do that again is by having a shareholders assembly, family council, family office, you set it up. The second part is establishing the family rules. So having a code of conduct for the family. It's like that. Where you address the ownership issues and where you also clearly lay down lines between family and business. You end up creating a family protocol. Next is having a good corporate governance mechanism in place in business that has a direct impact on family. Next, set up a conflict resolution mechanism. Even if there are no conflicts, please set it up, because that's something which will survive. That's something which will be there in future. We may not be there in future, but that mechanism and that structure will be there in future. And last thing and that's actually the first thing, commitment to fairness. In a family, without fairness, structures, mechanisms, whatever we set up are bound to fail. So that commitment is essential.
It's interesting.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for giving me time. Okay. I have 4 more slides and I'll finish. So, let's look at succession planning in slight more details, and I'm sure Girish will cover it in greater details. As I said, one of the important point is succession planning should lead to cohesive relationship between family members. So whatever you do. So if you are wanting to keep something secret for the reason that people will be disturbed, then after my passing over, people are certainly going to fight. And is that what I want? So please have a succession plan which you can share upfront, because if you can't share it, then sure, later on it is going to create problems. Separation of ownership and management important, because what you can do is you can give economic rights to everyone and you can give management to the person who is most able, who can do it, but economic rights of ownership to everyone. Obviously, you also need to plan for some of the passive family members, like daughters, like sisters, education, marriage. That's something which needs to be planned. And when I said creation of a family protocol, in a large family, and this slide captures what we have done for a large family, what a family protocol looks like. And in family protocol, if you look at ownership and management are separated, and virtually what you will have is various forums at the family level which allow every person in the family to raise his voice. So you have a family personal committee which takes care of personal matters of all the members of the family. You have a conflict resolution group, so if there are conflicts, then you will resolve them through those people. So and you'll have people who are trusted, who are respected, who have the confidence of the family, who sit in these forums. You have family council, and family council could be holding a seminar like this or a gathering like this every 3 months or every 6 months to get all the people together and hearing what their issues are. So that's something. And this family structure allows you to own the businesses through a holding company structure and run those businesses as separate legal entities if so required. Then there is a trust structure. And we all know trust have been historically used in India to own the businesses. Now let me point out some of the key benefits from the trust. If you look at a trust, what it allows is that you can divest your assets in favor of a trust, which means you are no longer the legal owner of the assets, but you are entitled to benefits from those assets. The legal ownership is with the trustees. What it does is, it separates out that wealth which could be attached in case something wrong happens to the business. Any asset which you own in your personal name can be attached for paying off any third-party liabilities. But if that asset is held by a trust, then it does not belong to you any longer. What you have is only a beneficial right to receive a benefit from the trust, and that asset cannot be attached. And that's something which has been used as a concept to separate and insulate any third-party liabilities arising on individuals. Yeah. It also helps in tax matters, like estate duty and other tax efficiency. It does help there. But the primary benefit of a trust is to separate the ownership. You can virtually run the business, be eligible for the benefits from that business without owning that business, because that business is being owned by the trust. That's something which trust provides.